All right, wonderful. I see a bunch of them who've joined. Okay, so while we wait for the rest of them to join, we will carry on with the introduction of the session. Once again, good afternoon to everyone. I hope I'm audible. Thank you so much for your cooperation. So we are going to start off with a very introduction of what is to be expected today, and then followed by our subject matter expert, Mr. Binit, who will be taking on from there. Thank you. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. I look forward to a wonderful session with all of you. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar organized by WEP. I'd also like to thank our subject matter expert, Mr. Binit, for taking time and joining us for today's session. On the whole, I look forward to a wonderful session with all of you today. I am Siddharth, and I handle the product marketing at WEP. So before we carry on with today's session, I'd like to give a small briefing about the company before moving on. Mr. Binit, you can move to the next slide. All right. WEP is a 20-year-old company as of today. And web was initially known as Wipro e-peripherals, which is part of Wipro itself. So as you can see, this is a timeline and hierarchy of how we've transformed, how we've evolved over the years. And in 2000, we actually became an independent entity itself. And so today we have multiple solution offerings. You can go to the next slide. So as you can see, we have multiple solution offerings for both the retail and the corporate segment itself. So as you can see, managed print services, digital transformation solutions, intelligent office automation solutions, and lastly, retail billing solutions. So before I move on, I'd like to give a small briefing about each of the offerings there is. Let me start off from the bottom, that is retail billing solutions. So here we manufacture billing machines for retail stores and Kirana stores. And so we have various offerings here. That is your traditional billing system itself, as well as the more modern Bluetooth based, Wi-Fi based retail billing solutions. Here we have about close to 2 lakh customers pan India. Moving on to the corporate side, we have web managed print services, where we provide printing services for close to 600 plus odd customers. So the business here is such that we deal with printing hardware based on requirement, and you would be charged per print. So this aside, we also deal with full service support, device or asset management, so on and so forth. So this is what we do with web management services, and we are number one in India on that part. Moving on to intelligent office automation solutions. Here we provide the latest range of best-selling Rico products, in fact. So we have a tie-up with Rico Japan to sell Rico products in the country. We have a wide range of enterprise digital printing, office automation, and industrial solutions on offer. And lastly, we have digital transformation solutions, which I will explain a little more in the next slide. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yes. So as you can see, we have GST and document management solutions. So what we are actually going to talk very much in depth today is document management solutions, which will again be taken care by Mr. Beneath. So I will give a small introduction about both of this, as you can see. First one being GST solutions. Here we in fact hold the license called GSP, that is GST Suvidha provider from the government and appointed by the GSTN itself. So this in overall is basically a taxation solution that we offer. So here we provide a host of offerings such as filing, your basic filing itself, reconciliation, data validation, data preparation, e-waybill automation, e-invoicing as a whole, and lastly, ERP integration. All this taken care by a one-stop solution. And to give you a small briefing about document management solutions, here we offer tailored custom solutions with the help of low-code development platform, which is what we're going to talk about in depth today. Business process automation, document management, as the name suggests, business intelligence, and digital signature solution. Underneath this, we have various solutions for smart content collaboration, which I will talk a little more in the next slide. Mr. Beneath, you can move to the next slide. Yeah. So as you can see, this is a very general briefing about what we have on the tool, what are the solutions that we offer. So we have a host of ready-made, ready-to-go kind of solutions. So as you can see, employee records management, procure to pay, management of change, vendor management, so on and so forth. So before I give it on to Mr. Vineet, who will be our subject matter expert and the person who's going to take over from here on, I'd like to show a quick slide of our customers that we have as of today. You can go to the next slide, Mr. Vineet. We offer a host of offerings within DMS itself. So all this will be custom made if the customer really requires some sort of customization over there. So moving on, I would like to give it on to Mr. Vineet. Mr. Vineet, you can take it forward from here. We're glad to have you here today, sir.
Thank you so much, Siddharth, and thanks for the wonderful intro. I hope I am audible. Is that so? Is my understanding fair enough, Siddharth?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for joining this webinar today, and I'm really pleased to introduce Web DMS to all of you. As a platform, we are essentially an enterprise digital transformation enabler. In the next close to 40 minutes, I would take the privilege to introduce you to Web DMS in two parts. Right, we'll just go through quick some 5 or 6 slides purely to set the context and to set the background on our core offering. There are a host of solutions that we provide, as Siddharth was mentioning in the intro. But in our webinar today, we are specifically going to focus on low-code platform and how applications are rapidly created. Enterprise applications are rapidly created on Web DMS, right? So it is the low-code piece that we are going to be focusing on in our discussion today. And as this slide says, Web DMS is an intelligent enterprise app development platform. Now, what does that mean? What exactly this specific offering from Web DMS, what we do is we rapidly transform ideas into high impact business applications. Or in other words, we're just going to make, or convert thinkers to makers. If you are having an idea around an application that you actually need for your day-to-day use in your work, then there is this platform on which you can make that application a reality. Now, how we actually go ahead and do that is something that we are going to see in the upcoming slides.
So, Mr. Vineet, I would like to intervene here. So, before we move on with further on with the slides, I'd like to launch a quick poll for all of you. Let me know if all of you are seeing this on your screen. All right, I hope this is visible on your screen. So, have you heard of the term low code before? Now, I'm sure we have a very mixed and diverse sort of audience today. So, Mr. Vineet will try and make it as easy as possible for all of you to understand the same. So I'm going to leave this for the next 1 minute before I shut down the poll. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for today's session. So I'd also like to mention that towards the end of the very session, for the last 10 minutes, we will be taking up questions. So if there are any questions based on the topic for Mr. Vineet, you can simply put it down on the chat and we will note it down. All right, I will be ending the poll right now and I will also share the results. So I hope all of you are seeing this on your screen. So it looks like we have a very mixed bag of audience today. Some of you have an idea of what low code is and some of you don't. So Mr. Vineet, I think you can go ahead with this understanding.
Sure. This is good to know. I'll try my best to keep a lot of technology related jargon out of the conversation that we're going to have from here on.
Okay, great. So I'll be stopping this. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. Right. So moving ahead as to what WPDMS offers to enterprises, right? I mean, our focus is purely on low code today, but on the larger landscape. Now, what exactly is WPDMS? As organizations embark on their digital transformation journey, few of the very core key components that organizations are going to need in their digital journey as they start with their digitization or automation and larger transformation initiative. Some of the key tools that they need: number one, you would need a document management system. This is for you to have your documents, your enterprise content managed in a central, safe, secure, scalable document repository. Number two, you would need a BPM engine, a business process management engine. Again, we will get into the details of this at the outset. It might sound a little technical, but we can go into the depth and see exactly what this is. But a BPM is nothing but a designer. It is a drag and drop and a point and click kind of a designer with which you really do not code to make applications for your organization. You kind of have a drag and drop designer to kind of assemble apps. You don't program, and how you exactly do that is what we're going to show in our demo today. Again, whatever said and done, there's still going to be some areas where you would need some basic level of programming, because end of the day, the applications are business applications. These are enterprise applications. These are going to have some kind of custom logic, some very niche, requirement, which is not generic enough that you can actually accommodate in a generic platform. You would still need to have a little bit of a coding done for that. So it's not extensive coding, and that's what you refer to as a low code. So with some basic scripts and queries and things like that, you actually get the capability to have your application enabled for your enterprise. And last but not the least, you would also need a BI layer, a business intelligence layer. This is nothing but your dashboards and your charts and your reports, etc. End of the day, your application is going to be consuming a lot of transactions. Now, what is the meaning that you're deriving out of all these transactions? How are you performing? What's the kind of run rate you are hitting? For example, if you're having something like a purchase to pay applications, how many purchase requests are coming on a monthly basis? What's been your largest purchase? So all these kind of summary level data that you want to derive in the form of various graphs and charts and reports, that's again one layer that you're going to need as you start your digitization journey. These are few of the core components that as a package you would need in your digital transformation journey. And this is specifically what WPDMS is, right? We are a low code platform. We are powered by a DMS, a BPM, a BI, suite engines. And there are a bunch of add-ons as well in the form of connections or adapters to robotic process automation, RPA engines, machine learning services, digital signatures, all of these, right? So basically, this is what the whole suite looks like, right? We have something called a document management engine and a workflow engine as our core. Now, this is what is essentially your platform. On top of the platform with a studio, again, this is what we leverage for the zero coding experience. With the studio, you can just drag and drop various components and build applications. There are a host of applications that you can create. There's absolutely no limit to the numbers that you could have. Maybe your finance team is going to need an invoice management application, a budget management application, expense claim processing. Your HR guys might need their kind of set of applications, leave management or grievance management or employee onboarding. Your procurement team would have their set of needs. Your audit team or your quality team, they're going to have their sets of needs. Now, each and every department, the kind of workflow oriented applications that they require is what our offering is. You can get these apps done in a matter of, a few hours or few days, rather than spending weeks or months for building applications, programming applications from scratch. And we are a REST API based platform. What does that mean? It means that we have capabilities to speak with other third-party interfaces, services, applications, be it ERPs or CRMs or ticketing solutions or HR applications, or any application from which you need to exchange data, pull data from those applications, or push data back into their databases. All of those are capabilities that we could do. We have the analytics running across both these layers, right? So you can actually have charts and pie charts or bar graphs or area graphs or scatter diagrams or any of those created based on the kind of data or transactions that have gone into these applications that you've enabled on top of the platform. So very simply put, we offer a platform to enterprises. Enterprises can go ahead and just develop. And when I say develop, it's not through coding, but through drag and drop kind of an interface. You just make your application a reality on top of the platform, right? So that's what this platform architecture is speaking about.
Yeah. So, Mr. Beneath, before you move to the next slide, while you go on to explain what is low code and why we need it, I will launch one more poll.
Sure, Siddharth.
Yeah. All right. So I hope all of you have been I hope you're seeing this on your screen. In the next 2-3 years, how many low-code development platforms will each enterprise have as a platform of their choice? Now, you need not be very accurate about this. We'd like to see what is it that you think from your point of view. I will leave this for the next 40 seconds. All right, I will be ending the poll right now, and I'd like to share the results for the same. So as you can see, there are a bunch of them who've said 4 and above. So quite the interesting input we have. So Mr. Beneath, I think you can go on from here.
Yeah, sure. So I think most of them have got it absolutely correct.
That's
so
right.
I did give a very high level view of what a low code platform is, but again, going to a little bit more details, what exactly is low code? This is where the industry is going. And as, we discussed in that poll question just a few seconds back, all the leading research organizations are saying this. Gartner is saying that by 2024, in the next 2 to 3 years, almost 75% of the global organizations around the world are going to be using at least 4 or more different low-code tools, because that is the kind of requirement that businesses are having in terms of wanting applications. Because with the disruptions, with the pandemic that has exposed the need for various business applications for businesses to have the flexibility and have the speed to launch applications, launch their offerings into the market. There's a huge requirement for applications to be available. We cannot, again, we are not in this world right now where we want to sit and spend 5 months or 6 months to actually get an application out there, because in the next 6 months, you would never know what's going to happen. Maybe that requirement might have totally changed. You might not need that application anymore. So you want the flexibility and you want the power to make applications, enterprise applications, software applications, a reality in a matter of hours or a few days. And that's exactly why low-code platforms are gaining a lot of traction in the market. Another stat that IDC has put forward that you can see here is in the last 5 years, between 2018 and 23, more than 500 million applications are going to be created. Okay, from 2018 onwards, if you go 5 years ahead. And that is more than the total number of applications that we create in the last 40 years put together. And the market itself is growing at 187 billion. It's expected to reach with a CAGR compounded annual growth rate of 31%. Now, these are again few of the supporting stats from various research organizations. But what exactly is low code? We are saying that you can build applications much faster by reducing the programming effort. You don't need a big, hotshot full-scale programmer for making certain kind of applications a reality in your organization. Number one, you have various building blocks that the platform offers, which IT users can just go ahead and assemble into applications. They don't write, tons and tons or thousands and thousands of lines of code. They're just going to drag and drop and make this application reality. And there are these visual tools that help you do that. So if you compare the traditional programming against, the low-code way of making apps, you would see that a lot of steps are actually not required in a low-code app framework. You don't actually define objects, classes, functions, and start coding and all of that. Instead, a lot of these happen through configuration, right? So that is specifically what, as a background or a high-level overview, low-code offers. Now, a particular use case that we wanted to discuss in our webinar today as an example to showcase WebDMS low-code app development platform is something like an invoice management application. And for that approach that we, as a standard, we follow in WebDMS is our Excel to app approach, which is a very, very unique offering from our platform. The offering is very simple. The requirements documents that are signed off by the customers, these can be directly pushed into the application. If you want to create database tables, what are the kind of data that you want to capture? For example, in an invoice management application, maybe you want customer name, invoice number, invoice date, all of that. Just insert this Excel sheet into the system. System creates the database tables on the back. The process flow diagrams, maybe, as soon as somebody starts the workflow, goes for a review or an approval, and then it goes to a director or a finance manager, etc. The flow diagram, just give that as an input to the system, that Excel sheet. The system automatically draws the flow diagram and then takes it forward from there, right? And that is essentially our unique offering. Now, in terms of how we do this, before I actually show you our application studio, some of the keywords that we're going to be using, we will start with DB tables. So any application that we want to create, end of the day, we are going to capture the data in few tables in the database. So what those tables should be and how it should be structured is the first thing that we do in any app design, followed by functions. So once the data goes into these tables, you would need to have queries, DB queries, to actually pull out data from this and present it to the user. It gets presented to the user in screens like these, right? So you can see that there's a sidebar menu. So you would have sidebar menus. And when you click on a menu, you get a landing page. For example, I've just clicked on loan applications and it gave me a landing page here. In our world, the landing page is called a list. So against each menu, I'm going to have a list. I click on loan application, I get the landing page or the list for that. Click on dashboard, I get the landing page or list for that. So for each of these sidebar menu items, I'm going to be having a list. Now, the list again here, it has various different transactions captured. I can click on a transaction, I can go into the details of the transaction. It'll tell me for, let's say, a loan application, who is a person, what is his KYC document, what are the loan application, application form and other supporting documents that he submitted, what's the loan amount requested. All these details comes up in a subsequent details page. And any new application that you want to register, you can click on a new request button here, and it is going to give you a form with which you can register new requests. So these are some of the key components you're going to see as part of the demonstration, where in the backend, in the bottom layer, you would have DB tables, functions that pull out data and present the data to you in screens such as this. to the end business user. The business user can go into the details of each and every transaction. He can, through our input page, log or register or input new transaction to the system. And then with the sidebar menu, you can browse across various pages, various screens, etc. Plus, you could have different kinds of dashboards and graphs and charts through our BI layer. Again, these are not coded. These are just through a drag and drop interface that designed. And you could even have documents coming out. For example, you might have NDAs or any kind of specific documents that you want to create out of the system that end of the day, you would want to have coming out of the application. So this is just a very high level overview of how the app is going to be. Now, as we start with the demonstration, this is in the larger interest of time, we just wanted to take a very simple use case where there's a finance user who's going to submit a customer invoice, and the system is actually going to check what's the invoice value. Is it greater than 50,000 rupees? If it's greater than 50,000, then send it to a finance director. If it's lesser than 50,000, give the onus of approval to a manager. And once they approve or reject, the process ends. Is a very, very simple use case we wanted to kind of take to introduce the whole concept and the studio to you, right? So as we are now in this slide, let me just stop with the presentation, and we can directly go into Web DMS platform and then start looking at the application screens, right? So I'm just going to log in now to the system as a designer, as an IT person who is going to be building an application, okay? Or who's going to be configuring, assembling an application together. Now I'm going to log in, and when I log in, there are a bunch of tools and icons that you see here. Since our webinar is focused on low-code app platforms today and not so much on document management, I'm going to leave the initial set of tiles untouched, leave these alone. We are introducing App Studio or App Store as the two core tiles with which you could have applications created. So any admin who wants to create application first would need to go into a studio, and he can actually go ahead and build an app. Now, before even you build the app, one of the things you could also do is download this template. So when you download the template, you will actually get this Excel sheet. It will just ask you for a bunch of details that the application requires. For example, what are the kind of users, the roles who are going to be using this application? What's the data you want to capture? All of that. So if you get these documented in the form of an Excel sheet upfront, and even have these signed off by the customer, then it becomes that much more faster and easier for you to get your application up and running. Now, let's just take one simple application and then go through the various options here. If I just take something like a test invoice management as an application in the finance category that I want to create, you can see the various tabs that come up here on top. That needs to be filled up, and then once all of these are filled, you just say publish the application to the store. It is very equivalent to like your iOS or Android app store concept here, where you just push your final app to the store and install the application in the final environment to enjoy the application. So once you just give values to all of this and publish, the application is going to be a reality. Now, what does all of these tabs hold? If I just go into the roles section, this is the first thing that the application asks, right? If I go back one slide to the presentation, you might remember finance user, finance manager, finance director are all parties, are all different roles who need to be participating in this process, right? So I'll just come here to the Excel data. I can just copy this entire Excel sheet here, come back to the application and say, create the role from an Excel. So I just clicked on the copy from Excel option, and I'm just pasting that here. Immediately, you can see that the system automatically parsed the data from that Excel, identified all the roles, assigned the role IDs also. And when I say next, it's just asking for a confirmation. And when I say create, see, all those roles get created in the system automatically. This is one way of doing it, or you can just go and manually add each and every role, finance director, finance manager, one by one, you can keep adding them, or to make it fast, you can even copy these out from an Excel sheet. This is, once you're done with the role, then you go into the so-called data. Data is nothing but your database table. In your application, maybe in an invoice management application, I've just decided that I want to have a table that's going to capture all these details. Customer name, address, whether it's a preferred customer or not, invoice number, invoice date, amount, attaching the actual invoice as a file, the remarks from finance user, remarks from manager, remarks from director, all of these, right? So again, I'm just going to say copy this from an Excel, and I can just copy paste this entire data, put this over here. Again, the system has identified the whole, table. You can say next. Now it will ask you, give a name for the table. So I'm just going to say invoice, maybe, demo invoice table is just a name that I'm going to give for our table. And it'll ask you, do you even want to create the form from here? A form is nothing but the data input page that the user uses to input data. If you want to create that, you can even create those forms here directly. So if I say, go ahead and create it, immediately the table got created. I can go inside, I can go into the columns of the table, and it will tell you, see, customer name got created, customer address, invoice number, that's a number field. Do you want to index any of these? So each of these fields, how it should be created, it just created those fields and the table in the back with all those columns. Next, you go into forms. Forms is nothing but the application or the page on which user enters data when he wants to submit a transaction. For example, in our case, when somebody wants to submit a transaction, you need to throw him a bunch of fields, ask him to enter the invoice number, the invoice date, invoice amount, customer name, all of that. Now, because in the previous page, I said you want to create the form also, you can come here, you can look at the form designer, see that customer name, address, preferred customer, all of those got created automatically in the system. You can group these as multiple sections into various tabs. You can add your own additional components here if you want to from the sidebar menu. For each of these, you can set properties. You can say that customer name, it should be mapped to the customer name field in our database. So there are, what should come up when you hover on top of this field on your tooltip. Any kind of range that you want to mention, whether it's a mandatory field or an optional field, all these kind of properties for each and every field you can set at a field level here in the form. Now, once your entire form is done, then you go into your workflow. This is nothing but the process flow that you need to create. Again, you can see that there are a bunch of controls here that you can use to create your process flow. You can just say start the process. As soon as the invoice submission is done, give it to a finance manager. So you just connect both of these together and say the next task is, finance manager review. After that, maybe I want to send it out for an approval. So, this time it's a finance director approval. So in this way, you can actually go ahead and build the forms. You can set the business flow the way you want it as per the process here that you've drawn here. That can be very easily set up. You can even upload this from an Excel sheet through the Excel copy function, and it will render the form here. Now, once the form is, the workflow is done, then you go into your screens. A screen is where you just need to mention what all needs to come in your menu. What are, data should be captured in your landing page. When you click on it in your details page, what all details have to be displayed. That is all. So you just go in and say, in my details page, I want so many tabs and all these, different fields should come up on my details page, all of those. Or maybe few of those I don't want, I can take them out, remove those. All the remaining fields are going to come up in the details page. That details page should be rendered when I click on the, landing page here. And here are the menus. Maybe I want, a new menu called invoices. This is the kind of menu layout. So all these are basic configurations that you mentioned. You would have permissions for each of the roles that you define. What are the kind of privileges you want to give for each of those roles? You just set these as some basic, configuration items and publish it into a store. The app gets created. Let us do that right away. I had created something to save time. I had created something upfront already for a demo. So this is what I'd created called WP Invoice Management, where I defined the same set of roles that we just now saw, the data, the forms, workflow, the various screens, what all menus should be there, the list, the permissions, all of those I defined in the system here. So once I have defined these individual items the way you wanted, let me just go back for a second. You will see that online help is the last tile. After that, there's nothing, right? Also, my app store right now is empty. There is nothing in my store. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my studio. I'm going to take up my designer, whatever I designed here, and I'm going to say publish to store. Okay. So we'll just give it some time. So it is, building all that data that we entered in our designer. It's publishing it right now. You can see the publishing is complete. I just close this, come out, go into App Store. You will see that in my store now this application is available. It's like you have just now pushed your app into the iOS App Store or the Android Play Store. Think about it in that fashion. Now from here, each user can actually go ahead and install the app in their environment. If I want to give this to Microsoft or a Google or any company, they can just go here, get inside this application and say install. Okay, so it's just going to now do all the backend work, create those tables, create those form elements, set relationships between all of those, deploy the build. There are a bunch of technology activities that happen. This takes a little bit of a time, somewhere around close to 40 seconds, 45 seconds roughly. It consumes. But if we just give this a few seconds, the system is now deploying the UI build. And right, done. The application is now ready for your use. Now, if you come out, you can see a new tile called WP Invoice Management, right? I'll just click on this tile. As an admin, I had logged in. You can see that the app is ready. Right? So I just go into the user management function first because I need to invite all the users who are going to be participating in this application. So I'm just going to maybe for ease of use, I'm just going to come here and this is company admin. So I just logged in as admin. So to the admin itself, I'm just going to say I need to even have the privilege to register invoices, right? And then if I just now I have only inbox and user management. Now that that permission is set, if I refresh the page, you will see that the invoices tab is also come, right? So I just go into invoices and I say, now from now on, I can start using the application. So I'll just say I want to register a new invoice in the system. It'll give me the form in the template I needed, broken by section and all that. Customer details, maybe I'm just going to say customer is, Microsoft and he's in, Washington, DC, USA. Preferred customer or not, yes. Invoice number 12345, some date. I'm just going to pick up today's date. Invoice amount is let's say let's say 40,000. So it will only go to a manager because the amount is less than 50K, right? And it's asking you to attach an invoice. So I'm just going to attach some sample file here and user remarks. I'm just going to say please review and approve. Some comment I'm giving, create it immediately. Submits the transaction. Now, I had ideally in a production world, this will go to an approval. I had set the company admin itself as a finance director, so you don't have to log in, log out, and all that. So if you go into his inbox, this transaction is waiting for him because now you are a finance manager, so it's waiting for finance manager approval. You can pick this up, look at all the details that the previous guy entered. The document section is going to hold the document. You can even preview the document live directly here itself. The activity history is going to show the entire history, when this was initiated, who did it, all these details. Everything is read-only for the user here. These permissions, again, you can set very easily. In our case, we had mentioned that all the fields should be editable for the first user. When it reaches a manager, everything should be read-only except the manager remark. That alone has to be fine. So I'm just going to say approve, and then say approve button, approve the task. Okay, the transaction gets completed. Right. So this is how you can very easily get applications, up and running on the platform. And the use cases are plenty, numerous, so many use cases out there. Just another scenario that we could show is the scenario of a ticketing application. This is again help desk application that we had recently provided to one of our customers, where there's a help desk. There's a ticket coming to a service team. The ticket could be, this is actually for a bank. So do you in a securities broking firm. So what is a kind of help desk? What is a kind of request based on the category? It will go to a regional office RO guy. Then it will on his approval it will go to an operations team who does the task. Then the system will check what kind of request is it. Is it a cash in or a cash out kind of a request? If yes, even a treasury guy needs to approve it. If not, it will copy all the files into a repository and end the flow. Right? So it's a similar concept here also, where you can actually log into the system and you can see the customer service application. So if I just logged in as a help desk guy here, there is inbox, there is all the tickets. So I can actually go ahead and raise a new ticket. It likes what the type of ticket, cash in, cash out, or any of this. So maybe I might say the change in the customer info, client address has changed is what I'm going to say. HQ, headquarters shifted. Shifted for, let's say, MRF tires. Please update the new address for HQ in Chennai. Some comment I'm giving and some due date that I'm going to give by when it should be completed. The customer name is MRF. Some priority, some account number that you need to provide, the branch number that you need to provide. The signature is verified. If yes, when was it verified? The attachments, supporting attachments, something. So I'm just going to again pick up some sample file here as an example and then say, please review. I can submit the ticket gets submitted. Now it will go as per our flow. It will go to a RO team, to a regional office. So if I just log out now and log into the system as a RO guy, this transaction will be waiting for me. Right? So if I just log into the system as an RO guy, I go to my inbox, see the MRF transaction. The system automatically appends the account ID and few details and all into the title. That is one of the requirements. So you can actually go inside and claim this task. So Harry Wilson from the RO team is going to claim it. So it now gets logged in his name. So he can go look at all the details that are entered by the previous guy. The documents are here. The activity history is here. And you can say, show me only the editable fields. These are the fields that he got to edit. So he'll say, I want to approve it. Approved. Now it will go on from here. Continue with the rest of the team exactly in a similar fashion. And you get all sorts of dashboards, reports, the way you want it. Different kinds of charts and all you can easily draw. We have 4 more minutes, so let me also quickly take you through how charts are done on our BI layer. So I'll just log into our BI system. This is our BI layer where I can go into the application and I can draw out charts. For example, this is actually a fleet management application for, again, one of the black banks where they wanted to book a cab for inspection, site inspections that they want to do. So all the data that your application is taking, you can plot various kind of graphs based on it. You can see that we don't code graphs from scratch. It is again plotted. So I might say, show me as a user, first the availability of a car. So the status is the first thing I want to see. Then it's a drillable graph. So once I know the availability, show me the type of the car. Maybe after that, the make of the car. Maybe after that, the driver's name. So like this, all the fields that your application is using are going to come up under the tab called dimensions. And you can use this for plotting the graph. Once you've identified all the fields, you just go and say, what's the kind of graph you need? So you can come here and say, is it a column graph? Within column itself, there are so many types you can select. Or is it a bar graph or a line, area, pie, donut? There are so many different formats you can select from. So for example, if I'm going to say I need a clustered column graph, it will immediately render you the graph as per the database data. There's one car that is unavailable and 15 that are available. If I click on those 15, then it will show you based on the type of the car. If I click on a type, it will show you based on the make of the car. So you just come here as a designer and design the graphs that you need for your application, and then call those graphs from your app here. So again, if I have to go into our designer, you will see that our designer has an area where you would hook up the graphs. It's called insights. So you can add a new dashboard ID here. With the dashboard, add a new dashboard here, and you need to provide the dashboard ID of the dashboard that you just created in the interface here, so that that dashboard renders in the final application that comes out. One more thing again that you could do is you can even generate documents out of this. Suppose you wanted the invoice to come out, or maybe as a simple example, if I take, let's say, WEP NDA, okay, any kind of contracts that you want to get created out of your application automatically. So it's actually a document following a standard template. So you can feed the template here. This is my template. Okay, it's an agreement between WEP and some other company and all of that. And I can see these placeholders here, right? So you can go ahead and feed the values here in the variables here in square brackets. So I'll say day and month and maybe year. Maybe this is between WEP and a company. So these are all variables that you want to be replaced. This is the company address. So like that, in double brackets, once you fill the placeholders with specific variables and you say scan the template, it'll immediately identify all those variables, right? Day, month, year, company address. Now you can even test this here. You can say, tell me that I signed an agreement on the 25th of April 2020 with Microsoft, who has the address as Microsoft Avenue, Washington, DC, USA 54874. Something like that. If I say show the document C, you can see here that it got immediately replaced 25th of April 2020 between WEP and Microsoft with the address and so and so. So if you want to have a process where there are a bunch of approvals that have to be done, and end of it, a document has to be generated where your application data has to be plugged in or inserted at specific locations inside the document, and a final document needs to come out, a document that follows a standard template. That is again something that we do, right? So I know maybe there's a lot of features that we discussed in the last 40 minutes or so. We have exactly 9 minutes left. Let me just take a quick pause here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your time and interest in WP DMS. Great speaking to all of you. Now, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have on the demo that we had till now.
Thank you, Mr. Binit. That was a really wonderful demo. So I actually have a few questions ready. So I'll just start asking them for you, so you can take them up. All right. So there's a question. Yeah. So there's a question from Mr. Shankar. Yeah. Is there any coding to enable complex conditions?
Absolutely, yes. I don't think we touched that. So coding could be at 3 levels, right? There could be, scripts that you could do. And when I say scripts, it could be server-side scripts, or it could be UI scripts. For example, let's go into our previous application itself, right? I will go into our form, and I am going to say, see, you see the scripting interface here. This is where you provide the UI script. For example, if you had in your form something called, a single line where you wanted to, let's say, capture the PAN number of the person. Okay. Now, when the person enters the PAN number, when the application is actually running, and as soon as it tabs out, okay, you want some validations to be done. Maybe the PAN has to be 5 alphanumerics followed by 4 numeric, numeral numbers followed by 1 alphanumeric. That kind of a validation and all of those, any kind of scripts, some arithmetic calculations, any of those that you want to do at the UI level, as and when the user is doing something on the screen, those could be provided as basic JavaScript here. This is number one. Number two is there could be server-side scripting. So server-side scripting again comes as part of your workflow. In your workflow, at each step, this is where you provide your server-side scripts. So you have a start task. As soon as a person has started something, it goes to a finance manager for approval. So before even it goes to the finance manager, a bunch of scripts have to be executed. For example, right? It should maybe calculate an 18% GST on that invoice amount and then provide a final amount. So those kind of calculations or any kind of such computations, there are even sample scripts that are available here. How do you want to insert into DB, update from DB, set the definition, variable definitions, all of that. So I can just copy these and then, kind of paste it here and then change, few of the scripting things, maybe the table name and all of those kind of placeholders here. Just change these out, insert into, the table name, etc. You can easily insert your own scripting logic here. If the logic to be incorporated is too complex, okay, for example, compare two files, extract the data out, manage the mismatches have to be inserted into a third Excel sheet. Those kind of very complex logic, you need to code those outside in a Java module through an Eclipse or a NetBeans or any of those editors, and then put that out as a jar file along with the build. It gets deployed. This is how you can actually handle very complex logic. So at these three levels, you could have development, actual programming done as well to handle complexities. Mr. Shankar, I hope I answered your question.
All right, wonderful. There's actually another question followed by the same thing from him. Is it possible to send email notifications?
Absolutely, yes. So again, you can come here into a config and you can state what is the kind of email templates that you can give. So you can create your own template and then you can set, this is a rich text editor. So you can again, have variables here. Maybe you can say dear and then insert a variable that should be the receiver name or the initiator name, things like that. And you can provide your own templates here and then fire these emails out in case you want specific places where emails have to be fired out in your designer, in your workflow designer itself. You can give those. For example, I'll just come here and say there is a send email task. So you can drop the send email task. You can even configure your email here. You can say, invoice approved, and you can say dear, and then insert those variables as we saw earlier. So dear, maybe initiator, your invoice is approved. So whatever you want to type, along with any attachments, you want to even add attachments here. You can configure this and say maybe, once the process starts up, the first thing I want is the email to be sent out. So you can actually state how you want this to be configured. So emails can be as and how the requirement is configured, sent out with attachment, without attachment, with the kind of text that you require.
Great. Okay. All right. So before I take up a few more questions, I'd like to launch one last poll. All right. So we'd like to know, how did you find the webinar session? As I mentioned earlier as well in the previous webinars, we'd like to improve over time based on your feedback. So I will leave this for the next 1 minute. And Mr. Bineet, there are a few more questions. I think we can take that up before we wrap up for the day.
Oh, sure.
All right. So there's actually a question from Mr. Sharma, SN Sharma. Will it take Excel formulas also along with data sheets?
Well, formulas are not something that the system can automatically take. If you have, Excel that are already created with Excel formulas out there, what we would have to do is we will have to pick up that data first from the Excel sheet, and then we will have to, provide that formula or enter that formula as a script, so that you're actually taking the raw data and then executing the formula and top of the script, pretty much like how you do it in the Excel. So as such, from Excel directly, Excel does not expose the formula to be picked up by a third-party application like this. So we'll not be able to pick up the Excel formula, but if the formula is known, we could very well use that formula in the script and then achieve the same result.
All right. So there's a question from Shankar, Mr. Shankar again. Before I take that up, I will take another question. Can this be accessed through mobile? Ms. Amruta has asked.
Very much. So all of these applications that we are creating in the platform, in WebDMS platform, those are mobile compliant as well. So the standard default template would be something like this. So the sidebar, it will come up in a hamburger like this, and from your inbox you can go into the details, go ahead, approve transactions, the dashboards, etc. will come up. So all of these are mobile compliant. These are not native applications. We follow an architecture called PWA, Progressive Web App. So these applications are actually rendering in a browser in the back, but you will not actually see the browser. You will not see the browser controls and all of that, the address bar or all of these, but you would still be very much able to access the application, both in mobiles as well as in tablets.
Great. Okay. So coming back to Mr. Shankar's question, is it possible to modify the existing applications as per organization's requirements?
I just want to understand a little bit more. So does it mean that the applications are already, once the applications are created, you want those to be modified? If yes, of course, you can go ahead and create the application once, and then every time you want to do a change, maybe insert new approvers or add new fields into the application, you can keep on adding those and republishing the apps. So, one of the biggest strengths of low-code platforms is the capability to seamlessly and very quickly add those changes, rather than again wanting to engage a programmer to code. I hope that is a question that Shankar was asking.
Okay. All right. He has another question. Is it possible to access in tab as well? Mrs. Shankar, I'm not sure if you meant a tablet, if I'm right, like an iPad or Android device.
Yeah, if it is that, if that was what Shankar's question is, yes. The answer is a yes, both on mobiles as well as on tabs, because we have a PWA interface. It renders on both those interfaces, so it could very well be accessed on a tab also.
Okay. There's a question from Mr. Manish. Does it have any rule engine as well as for basic validations, customizations?
Yeah, we do have some basic rules as such. Standard rules could very well be, provided in our own scripting interface. Especially, a few of these, like conditional parameters or rules based on those certain conditions, and all of those you can easily put into the system. But a very comprehensive rule engine which keeps on changing, a policy-based bunch of rules, etc. If those kind of requirements are there, we would need to integrate with a third-party rule. basic rules can very well be out of the box handling the platform.
Okay. So I think Mr. Shankar has actually responded to our query. He's mentioned saying to modify available applications within WebDMS.
Oh, okay. So very much, the way we approach our customers is we have the platform. We have some standard templates, as Siddharth was mentioning in the intro, like your management of change, MOC, or employee onboarding, etc. These are industry standards, or these are implementations that you've already done for various customers. Now, according to the requirements of a particular customer, if these need to be tweaked, modified, it can very well be done, and a specific version could be provided to an end customer. That is very much a possibility.
All right. A question from Mr. Kalidas. Can I use external C+ code for complex validation?
No, unfortunately cannot, because we are pretty much a Java shop. So all our core components are from an architecture perspective, it is on Java. Taking external code and then parsing those, compiling those, and then adding it to the suite is not something that we can do. But in terms of having the platform and then the training on top of it and enabling users to have it written on the existing platform is something that we support.
Okay, followed by another question from him. Can we integrate external APIs?
Absolutely, yes. So for that, you have this thing called the connector task. Okay, I think we lost the connection to the server, but basically you have the external connector task. So the external connector task is where you can drop in a task and you can select the connector. Okay, I don't have a connector configured. That's why it was actually showing the error. But if you are having a connector where, for example, a service to SAP or to Oracle EBS or to Salesforce or any of those, that service structure can be actually configured in our generic connector framework in the admin panel. Let me see if I can show that to you. It can be added as a connector there, and we can see there is a connector tab here. So you actually come here and you add a connector. This connector could be, you can specify the entire JSON data, the list of parameters, the JSON parameters in which that particular service is expecting the input. Once the connector is added here, in your process flow designer, you will be able to access that connector, and then whatever fields, form data that you've entered, you can pass those variables into the connector so that it can seamlessly pass data over to a third-party application. That is how we integrate with all those applications that we have shown in our intro slides.
Wonderful. We have exceeded by about 5 minutes. So I think we can wait for another minute max to max if there's one or two questions. If not, we will close. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for today's session. And a big thank you to Mr. Bineet for having spent time with us.
Thank you so much, all of you. Wonderful to have had this opportunity to present our platform to you. I hope this was a useful 1 hour that you spent with us. And Siddharth, a big thank you to you for facilitating and coordinating the session.
The pleasure is mine, sir. The pleasure is mine. Thank you. So I'd like to mention to all of you that the team will be reaching out to you shortly in the next 1 or 2 working days. If not tomorrow, definitely by Monday. So if there's any one-on-one queries, if there's any demo that you would like to see, we'd definitely reach out to you on the same. Wonderful. I think we can close it with that. On that note, I'd like to thank Mr. Beneath one more time, and we will end today's session. I hope all of you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.